Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything, you guys. Watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The air in Harlem was thick with the scent of cornbread wafting from Miss May's bakery on 125th Street, mingling with the sultry notes of a saxophone spilling out from a jazz club across the way. Lenox Avenue pulsed with Life Street vendors hawking sweet potato pies, kids laughing as they darted past brownstones and the faint hum of Billie Holiday's voice drifting from an open window. This was home for Isla Monroe, a 26-year-old librarian at the Schomburg Center, where she spent her days surrounded by books and her nights curled up with Maya Angelou's poetry. Her natural curls framed a face that held deep brown eyes, warm and searching, and a smile that could hush a room. Around her neck hung a turquoise necklace, a gift from her grandmother Amara, a reminder of the strength that ran through her veins as a black woman. Isla's life was quiet, predictable, untouched by love. She'd never been kissed, never felt the rush of a racing heart. Folks called her a late bloomer, but lately she wondered if she'd ever bloom at all. That thought lingered as she locked up the library one chilly evening, the neon sign flickering above the entrance. Her phone buzzed, and her father's name flashed on the screen. His voice when she answered was raw, broken. "Isla, we're in trouble." She hurried to their cramped apartment on Lenox Avenue, where the smell of her mother's old rosewater perfume still clung to the curtains. Her father sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, a half-empty bottle of bourbon beside him. "It's 50,000, he rasped, not meeting her eyes. "Gambling debts. They're gonna take the house." Isla's stomach twisted. The apartment with its creaky floors and faded photos of her mother's smile was all they had left since her passing. She knew about her father's late nights at underground poker tables, his promises to quit. But this, losing their home. "How did it get this bad?" she asked, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. He looked up, guilt carving lines into his face. "Damian Blackwell. He's the one I owe. He says he'll wipe it clean, the house, the debt, everything, but he wants something." Isla's throat tightened. "What does he want?" Her father's eyes dropped to the floor. He wants you to marry him." The drive to Manhattan felt like a descent into another world. Isla sat in the back seat of a sleek black car, her simple cream dress stark against the leather seats. Her suitcase held a few essentials. A worn copy of I Know Why, the Caged Bird, sings a photo of her mother, and the turquoise necklace she never took off. Outside, Harlem's vibrant chaos gave way to the polished streets of Upper West Side, where brownstones gleamed under streetlights. The car stopped at a mansion, its stone facade looming like a fortress, windows glowing with the soft light of chandeliers. A woman in a crisp suit greeted her at the door. "Miss Monroe." "I'm Claire, Mr. Blackwell's assistant. Follow me." Isla nodded, clutching her bag like a shield, her heels clicking on marble floors that stretched into a grand hall. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light, but the opulence felt cold like a warning. Claire led her to a study lined with books, shelves of leather-bound classics that in another life Isla would have loved to explore. Instead, she stood still, heart pounding, waiting for the man who'd just bought her future. The door opened, and Damian Blackwell stepped in. He was taller than she'd imagined, broad-shouldered with a presence that sucked the air from the room. His black hair was slicked back, his tailored suit sharp as a blade, but it was his eyes that stopped, her gray cold like a winter storm over the Hudson River. He looked at her, not with warmth or curiosity, but with the detached appraisal of someone inspecting a contract. "Miss Monroe," he said, voice deep and clipped, "I trust you understand the terms." Isla swallowed, forcing herself to meet his gaze. 6 months. As your wife in name only. Then the debt's gone, and I'm free. He nodded, moving to a mahogany desk, picking up a pen like he was already dismissing her. The wedding's tomorrow. Claire will handle the details. This is a business deal. Nothing more. Don't expect affection, and don't complicate things. Her cheeks flushed, not from shame, but from a spark of defiance. I didn't choose this, she said quietly, but I'll honor it. Just don't expect me to act like I'm happy about it. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. Then it vanished, replaced by his icy mask. Fair enough, he said. We understand each other. He turned away and Claire ushered Isla out, her heart a storm of fear and resolve. Tomorrow she'd marry a stranger who saw her as a clause in a contract, not a woman. Yet as the study door closed behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd glimpsed something in Damian Blackwell's eyes. Something not as soulless as he wanted her to believe. The wedding was a hollow spectacle at the Plaza Hotel, a masterpiece of extravagance with vaulted ceilings and glittering chandeliers. White roses arched over the aisle, their scent heavy in the air. But the room felt empty. No family, no friends, just lawyers. Damian's staff and a photographer hired to capture a staged moment Isla's father had called that morning. His voice choked with apologies, but she'd cut him off. I'm doing this for you. Don't make it harder. She didn't want excuses. In a private room, Isla stood before a tall mirror, barely recognizing herself. The white gown hugged her slender frame, its sheer veil softening the fear in her brown eyes. Her curls were swept into an elegant updo, lips tinted with pale red. She looked like a bride, but felt like a puppet. Claire entered, expression unreadable. It's time, Miss Monroe. Isla nodded her heels, clicking on the marble floor as a soft violin melody began. The chapel doors opened, revealing Damian at the end of the aisle, stoic in a black tuxedo. He didn't smile, didn't offer a trace of welcome, just stood like a statue waiting. Each step felt heavier, the eyes of strangers grazing her, but she focused on not stumbling. When she reached, Damian extended his hand and she placed hers in his. His palm was warm, a stark contrast to his cold gaze. Let's get this over with, he murmured low enough for only her to hear. The ceremony was mechanical vows, recited without feeling. I, Damian Blackwell, take you, Isla Monroe, to be my lawful wife, he said, voice deep, emotionless. Isla repeated her vows, her voice trembling, but clear. When the officiant declared them, husband and wife, Damian leaned in, his lips brushing her forehead, a ritual, not a kiss. The small crowd clapped, but the sound rang hollow. At the reception, a long table overflowed with caviar and champagne, but Isla only sipped water. Her stomach knotted. Damian sat beside her, chatting with lawyers, as if she didn't exist. She watched him from the corner of her eye, the way he tilted his head while listening, the faint tap of his fingers on the table like he was counting down the seconds to escape. Then a waiter tripped, splashing red wine across her gown. Isla stood apologizing with a faint smile, though her insides churned. She hurried to the restroom, blotting the stain, but the dress now bore a deep red blotch. When she turned, Damian was there, jacket off his white shirt, slightly unbuttoned. For the first time, his eyes lingered on her, tracing the curve of her neck where the turquoise necklace rested. You don't have to apologize for someone else's mistake, he said, voice low, not entirely cold. He held out his jacket. Cover it up. Don't let them see. Isla blinked, caught off guard. She draped the jacket over her shoulders, the scent of his cologne sandalwood and a hint of mint enveloping her. Thank you, she said softly. But he'd already turned, heading back to the table like nothing had happened. The night unraveled into chaos. As they left the plaza, Rain poured a sudden deluge that turned Manhattan's streets into rivers. Damian drove his knuckles white on the wheel, the silence between them heavy. Isla stared out the window, the city lights blurring through the rain, her mind replaying his jacket, his words, the way his eyes had lingered. She didn't notice when he pulled over on a quiet stretch of Lenox Avenue back in Harlem, until the engine cut off. "What are you doing?" she asked, turning to him. He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned across the console, his hand lifting her chin and kissed her. It was fierce, urgent, like a storm breaking loose. His lips were warm, tasting of rain and sandalwood, a sharp contrast to the cold water dripping from her hair. The sound of rain pounded the car roof, a wild jazz rhythm that matched her racing heart. His hand slid to her waist, fingers pressing through her damp dress, tracing the curve of her hip with a hunger that made her breath catch. Isla froze for a split second, then melted into him, her hands finding his chest, feeling the heat of his skin through his soaked shirt, the thud of his heartbeat under her palms. The kiss deepened, a dance of need and restraint, their breaths mingling in the confined space. Her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, and a soft moan escaped her lips, barely audible over the rain's roar. His thumb brushed her jaw, sending a shiver down her spine, and for a moment, the world was just them, two souls caught in a fleeting, forbidden fire. Then he pulled back, eyes dark with conflict, his breath ragged. "I shouldn't have done that," he murmured, voice rough. Isla touched her lips, still tingling, her heart a chaotic drum. "Don't say that," she said, voice trembling, but firm. "Not unless you didn't mean it." He didn't answer, just stared at her, the rain streaking down the windows like tears. Without another word, he started the car and drove on, the silence heavier than before. Isla leaned against the window, the cool glass grounding her as Harlem's lights flickered past. That kiss, her first, had shaken her to her core. Was it a mistake, a moment of weakness, or something real? She didn't know, but one thing was certain: Damian Blackwell wasn't as untouchable as he seemed. Back at the mansion, Isla lay in the guest room, the silk sheets cold against her skin. Her fingers traced her lips, replaying the kiss, the heat of his mouth, the press of his hand, the way her body had responded like it had a mind of its own. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "Don't fall for him, Isla, don't." But deep down, she knew it was already too late. The morning sun filtered through the silk curtains of the Upper West Side mansion, casting a golden glow across the polished hardwood floors. Isla Monroe woke in the guest room, her body stiff from a night spent replaying that kiss. The rain-soaked heat of Damian Blackwell's lips, the press of his hand on her waist, the way her heart had betrayed her with every thud. She glanced at the empty side of the bed, half expecting to find him there, but the sheets were untouched. The clock read 7:00 a.m., and the silence of the mansion was deafening. Isla stood, slipping into a light blue dress from her suitcase, determined not to let this place swallow her. If she had to live here for 6 months, she'd carve out a piece of herself in it. The kitchen was a sleek expanse of marble and stainless steel, a far cry from her cozy Harlem apartment. She opened the fridge, surprised to find it stocked with fresh greens, cornbread mix, and even a jar of peach preserves. Claire's doing, no doubt. Isla smiled, grateful for the small gesture, even if it came from someone following orders. She set to work, the familiar rhythm of cooking, calming her nerves. The scent of frying eggs and brewing coffee filled the air, grounding her in a place that felt like a museum. As she set a plate of eggs and cornbread on the table, footsteps echoed down the hall. Damian appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a crisp navy suit, his hair damp from a shower. His gray eyes flicked over her, then the table, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he masked it. "What's this?" he asked, voice deep but not harsh. Isla placed a mug of coffee down, trying to keep her tone casual. Breakfast. Figured you might want something before you head out. He raised an eyebrow, stepping into the kitchen, but not sitting. I don't eat breakfast here. My office handles that. Oh. Isla's cheeks warmed, but she shrugged, masking the awkwardness. Guess I'll eat alone then. No big deal. Damian studied her for a moment, as if weighing something. Then he turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. Don't overdo it, he said, his tone flat, but with a hint of something softer. Claire will show you how things work around here. He disappeared down the hall, leaving Isla with her coffee and a nagging sense that he'd noticed more than he let on. The days that followed settled into an uneasy rhythm. Damian left before dawn and returned late often when Isla was already tucked away in the study, nose buried in a book or tending the backyard garden. The mansion was so vast they rarely crossed paths, and when they did, he offered only a nod or a clipped word. Isla didn't push for more. She wasn't here to win him over. Instead, she found solace in small acts of rebellion. The garden, overgrown with weeds, became her sanctuary. She spent afternoons on her knees, pulling roots and planting lavender seeds she'd brought from Harlem, their faint purple blooms a reminder of home. Each evening she sat under an old oak tree reading Still I Rise, or jotting thoughts in a journal, determined to hold on to herself in this strange, gilded world. She also cooked, leaving plates of cornbread or collard greens in the fridge for Damian, though he never touched them. It was her way of saying she wasn't invisible, even if he acted like she was. One morning, as she flipped through a worn copy of Maya Angelou's poems, her phone buzzed. Nia Carter's name lit up the screen, and Isla's heart lifted. Nia, her best friend since high school, was a freelance journalist in Harlem, all sharp wit and fierce loyalty. Girl, you alive in that castle? Nia's voice was warm teasing, but laced with concern. Heard some whispers round town, that Vanessa chick's talking smack, saying you're Damian's little puppet. Isla's stomach twisted. Vanessa Reed, the sleek investor from the wedding, had left a sour taste. Let her talk, Isla said, trying to sound unbothered. I'm just doing what I gotta do, Nia snorted. Uh-huh, and that kiss you mentioned. Spill the tea, Isla. What's the vibe with Mr. Ice King? Isla hesitated, her fingers tracing the turquoise necklace at her throat. It was intense, but he acts like it never happened. I don't know what to think. Watch your heart, sis, Nia warned. Rich boys like him play games. If he hurts you, I'm coming for him, billionaire or not. Isla laughed, the sound easing the weight in her chest. Noted. You coming to visit soon, Bet? I need to see this mansion for myself. Stay strong. Okay? The call ended, but Nia's words lingered, a reminder of the world Isla had left behind. She was still mulling it over when Claire appeared, holding a silver-wrapped box. Mr. Blackwell requests you get ready for tonight, she said, her tone as even as ever. A charity event in Savannah. He wants you to accompany him. Isla blinked, surprised. Savannah? As in Georgia? Why me? Claire shrugged, setting the box on the table. He didn't say. Open it. I'll help you prepare. Inside was a white dress, simple yet elegant, its silk soft with a subtle V neckline and a skirt that flared gently. It wasn't flashy, but it felt like it was chosen for her. Not some generic bride. Isla slipped into it, standing before a mirror as Claire styled her curls into a loose bun, leaving a few strands to frame her face. A touch of makeup brought out her brown eyes and the glow of her skin. When Isla looked at her reflection, she didn't see the shy librarian from Harlem. She saw a woman still herself, but stronger, ready to face whatever this night would bring. As she descended the mansion's grand staircase, Damian waited in the foyer, sharp in a black tuxedo. His eyes swept over her from her curls to the hem of her dress, lingering on the turquoise necklace before meeting her gaze. For a split second, his expression softened, but he quickly turned away, masking it. "You're ready," he said dryly, though his hand lingered when he opened the car door for her. The flight to Savannah was quiet. The private jet's hum, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Isla's mind. Why had Damian asked her to come? Was it just part of the contract or something more? She stole glances at him, his profile sharp against the window, lost in thought. When they landed, a car whisked them to Forsyth Park, where the charity gala was held under a canopy of ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss. Azaleas bloomed in vibrant pinks and reds, their sweet scent mingling with the salty breeze from the nearby Savannah River lanterns, cast a warm glow, and a string quartet played softly, the notes weaving through the humid air. Isla felt out of place among the glittering gowns and polished chatter, but she held her head high, the turquoise necklace a quiet anchor. Damian introduced her as my wife. The words short and unembellished, but he stayed close, his presence, steady warmth at her side. Then she appeared, Vanessa Reed, her red dress hugging every curve, her smile sharp as a blade. "Damian, darling," she purred, ignoring Isla. "It's been too long. And this, your new wife? What a surprise. I thought you preferred women with a bit more sparkle." Heat rushed to Isla's face, but she didn't flinch. "Sparkle's overrated," she said, voice calm but cutting. "Some of us shine without needing an audience. Thanks for the concern, though." A few guests chuckled, and Vanessa's smile faltered before she slinked away. Damian glanced at Isla, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Well played," he murmured, guiding her to the dance floor. He held out his hand, and she took it, her heart pounding as he pulled her into a slow waltz. The world shrank to just them, his hand warm on her waist, his eyes locked on hers, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the azaleas. "You didn't back down," he said, not a question. "I'm not afraid of words," Isla replied, meeting his gaze. "I only fear things that matter." He didn't respond, but his grip on her waist tightened, and for a moment his mask slipped, revealing something raw, unguarded. When the music ended, he didn't let go immediately, a quiet current passing between them. The night took a turn when Marcus Tate, Damian's best friend and lawyer, approached, a tall man with a kind smile and sharp eyes. Marcus carried an air of quiet strength. "Isla, good to meet you," he said, but his tone held a hint of caution. Later, as Damian stepped away to speak with donors, Marcus pulled Isla aside near a blooming azalea bush. "I need to be straight with you," he said, voice low. "Elena, Damian's ex. She was my sister. He hasn't been the same since she died. He blames himself. I don't know if he's ready to let anyone in, and I don't want you getting hurt." Isla's chest tightened. "I'm not here to fix him," she said softly. "I'm just here." Marcus nodded, but his eyes lingered, searching. "Just be careful, okay?" Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air. Vanessa, glass of champagne in hand, sauntered over. "Isla, tell me, how's life in the big leagues? Must be a shock coming from..." "What, Harlem's back streets?" Isla's jaw clenched, but she kept her cool. "Harlem taught me how to stand tall, Vanessa. Something you might want to learn instead of bowing to money." The crowd nearby stifled laughs, and Vanessa's eyes narrowed before she stormed off. Isla exhaled, but Marcus's warning and Vanessa's venom clung to her like the humid Savannah air. Was she just a placeholder in Damian's world? A contract clause he'd forget? In 6 months, the drive back to the airport was tense, the sky darkening with an approaching storm. Rain began to fall soft at first, then a deluge. Damian pulled the car over on a quiet road lined with live oaks, their branches swaying wildly. "We'll wait it out," he said, voice tight, but his eyes were on her. "Not the rain." Isla's heart raced. "Why did you bring me here?" She asked, the question spilling out. "What am I to you?" He turned to her, his gaze intense, unguarded for the first time. "You're different," he said, voice low, almost a confession. "You make me feel things I thought were dead." Before she could respond, he leaned closer, his hand brushing her cheek, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. The air crackled, charged with the same electricity as that Harlem night, but this time he didn't kiss her. Instead, he pulled her into his arms, his breath hot against her neck, the scent of sandalwood and rain enveloping her. His hands slid to her back, pressing through her damp dress, feeling the curve of her spine. Isla's breath hitched her hands, gripping his shoulders, the heat of his body searing through his soaked shirt. A soft sound escaped her, half sigh, half moan, lost in the rain's roar. "You're dangerous, Isla," he whispered, his lips grazing her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "You make me want to break every rule I've got." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her voice trembling but firm. "Then break them. But don't play with me, Damian. I'm not a game." For a moment he looked like he might kiss her, his thumb brushing her lower lip, his breath ragged, but then he pulled away, restarting the car, the moment shattering like glass. The rain pounded harder, and Isla stared out the window, her body still humming from his touch, her heart caught between hope and fear. That embrace, the way he'd held her, like she was both his salvation and his ruin. It was more than a contract, but was it enough to trust him with her heart? The Manhattan dawn was a soft bruise of purple and gold, spilling through the tall windows of the Upper West Side mansion. Isla Monroe stood in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, the bitter aroma grounding her after another sleepless night. The memory of Savannah clung to her like the scent of azaleas, Damian's arms around her in the rain, his breath hot against her ear, his whispered confession that she made him want to break his rules. But since they'd returned, he'd retreated again. His gray eyes shuttered his presence, as fleeting as a shadow. Was that moment real, or was she just a fool for hoping? Her phone buzzed, Nia Carter's name lighting up the screen. Isla smiled, grateful for her best friend's voice, a tether to Harlem's warmth. "Yo, Isla, you good?" Nia's tone was equal parts concern and sass. "Word on the street is Vanessa's out here spreading lies. Says you're just Damian's arm candy. A Harlem girl playing dress-up." Isla's grip tightened on the mug, her turquoise necklace cool against her skin. "She's got nothing better to do," she said, trying to sound unbothered. "I'm handling it." "Uh-huh," Nia said, unconvinced. "And Mr. Billionaire? He's stepping up or still acting like you're invisible?" Isla hesitated, the memory of Damian's touch in the rain flashing through her. "He's complicated. I don't know where I stand." Nia's voice softened. "Protect your heart, sis. You're too good for half measures. I'm coming by this weekend to check on you. We'll hit up Miss May's for some cornbread. Keep it real." The call ended, but Nia's warning echoed, stirring a restlessness in Isla. She wasn't just a contract wife. She was Isla Monroe, a black woman who'd grown up in Harlem's hustle, who'd read Maya Angelou's Still I Rise to find strength. She wouldn't let Damian, Vanessa, or anyone make her feel small, but that resolve wavered when she found a note slipped under her door, written in Damian's sharp handwriting. "Dinner tonight, 7 p.m. Wear the dress from Savannah." Her heart skipped, a dangerous hope flickering. Was this his way of reaching out, or just another clause in their deal? That afternoon, Isla was in the mansion's study flipping through a poetry anthology when Claire appeared with a thick envelope. From Mr. Blackwell's office, she said, her tone neutral. Inside was a financial statement, and Isla's breath caught as she scanned it. Damian had paid off her father's $50,000 debt the day she'd signed the contract weeks ago without telling her. The house in Harlem, her mother's rosewater-scented apartment, was safe. But why hadn't he said anything? Was he buying her loyalty, or did he want her to stay for reasons he couldn't admit? The question gnawed at her as she prepared for dinner. The white silk dress from Savannah hugged her curves, its V neckline framing the turquoise necklace. She left her curls loose, their natural bounce a quiet rebellion against the mansion's sterile elegance. When she descended the staircase, Damian was waiting, his black suit tailored to perfection, his eyes tracing her from head to toe. For a moment, his mask slipped, desire flashing in his gaze, but he quickly looked away, offering his arm. "We're expected at the plaza," he said, voice clipped. "A gala business associates will be there." Isla nodded, her hope dimming. Just another performance, then. The plaza's ballroom was a glittering cathedral of chandeliers and white roses, the air heavy with champagne and ambition. Isla stood tall, her presence drawing curious glances, but she felt the weight of being an outsider, a black woman from Harlem in a sea of Manhattan elite. Damian stayed close, introducing her as my wife, the words mechanical but carrying a strange weight. She caught sight of Marcus Tate, Damian's lawyer friend, who gave her a warm nod, but his eyes held the same caution he'd shown in Savannah. Then Vanessa Reed slithered into view, her emerald gown catching the light like a serpent's scales. "Isla, how charming," she said, her smile venomous. Still playing the dutiful wife. Must be exhausting, keeping up with Damian's world. Isla's jaw clenched, but before she could respond, Nia appeared, having snuck into the gala as a journalist. "Exhausting's trying to keep up with your lies, Vanessa." Nia shot back, her voice dripping with Harlem swagger. "Why don't you find a new hobby?" The crowd tittered and Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she didn't retreat. "Careful, Isla," she purred, leaning closer. "Damian's tastes change. You're just a phase." Isla met her gaze, her voice steady. "I'm not here to be his taste, Vanessa. I'm here to be me, and that's more than you'll ever understand." The room fell silent for a beat, then applause rippled through the guests. Vanessa's smile froze and she stormed off, but her words burrowed into Isla's heart. Was she just a phase? A contract bride Damian would discard when the 6 months were up? She glanced at him, hoping for reassurance, but he was deep in conversation with a group of suits, oblivious to her turmoil. The gala took an unexpected turn when Lila Brooks, a sharp-eyed editor from a Manhattan publishing house, approached Isla. "I heard about your work at the Schomburg." Lila said, her tone professional but tinged with skepticism. "I'm curating a book on urban libraries. I'd like you to write a piece about Harlem's. But it needs to be exceptional. Our readers expect polish, not just passion." Isla's heart leaped, but Lila's words stung a subtle jab at her background. "I've got both," Isla replied, her voice firm. "You'll have my draft by next week." Lila nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. "I'll hold you to that." The encounter should have been a triumph, but doubt crept in. Was Lila's offer genuine, or did she see Isla as a token, a diverse voice to check a box? The thought was interrupted by a commotion near the bar. Isla overheard Vanessa, her voice low but venomous, speaking to a man in a pinstripe suit. "Damian's distracted," she said. "His new wife's got him off his game. Now's the time to push that merger. His board's losing faith." Isla's blood ran cold. Vanessa was plotting against Damian, using her as a wedge. She slipped through the crowd, finding Damian near a window overlooking Central Park. "We need to talk," she said, pulling him aside. "Vanessa's scheming with someone. Something about a merger and your board." Damian's eyes darkened, but his response was ice. "I don't need you playing hero, Isla. I handle my own business." Her chest tightened, hurt flaring. "I'm not playing anything. I'm trying to help you." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Stay out of it," he said, turning back to the crowd. The dismissal cut deeper than Vanessa's barbs, and Isla felt the fragile thread of hope she'd clung to fraying. Back at the mansion, the tension boiled over. Isla found Damian in the study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, the firelight casting shadows on his face. "Why didn't you tell me you paid off the debt?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "The house in Harlem, it's safe, has been for weeks. Why keep it from me?" He set the glass down, his eyes meeting hers. Guarded. "I didn't want you to feel obligated." Obligated. Isla's laugh was bitter. "I'm your contract wife, Damian. Obligation's the whole deal. But you don't get to hide things from me, then act like I'm the one complicating this." He stood, closing the distance between them, his presence overwhelming. "You think I want this to be just a deal?" he said, voice low, raw. "You're under my skin. Isla, every damn day you make me question everything I've built to keep people out." Her breath caught his words, a spark in the dark. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the heat radiating from him. His hand reached for hers, fingers brushing her wrist, sending a jolt through her. He pulled her closer, his other hand sliding to her lower back, pressing through the silk dress, feeling the curve of her spine. The air crackled, charged with unspoken need. His breath was hot against her cheek, the scent of whiskey and sandalwood dizzying. Isla's hands found his chest, her fingers curling into his shirt, feeling the hard planes of muscle beneath the rapid thud of his heart. "Stay," he whispered, his lips grazing her jaw, sending shivers down her spine. "Don't make me beg, Isla." Her body hummed, every nerve alight. But Vanessa's words, Marcus's warning, and the Damian's cold dismissal at the gala crashed over her. She loved him. She couldn't deny it. But love wasn't enough if he couldn't see her as more than a contract. "I can't," she said, voice breaking, pushing him away. "I love you, Damian, but I won't stay where I'm not truly wanted." His eyes widened, shock and pain flashing across his face, but she didn't wait for a response. She turned her heels, echoing on the hardwood. As she fled the study, tears blurring her vision in her room, she packed her suitcase, leaving the turquoise necklace on the nightstand with a note, "I deserve to be loved, not owned. Goodbye, Damian." She stepped out into the Manhattan night, the city's pulse a stark contrast to her shattered heart. The sound of her heels on the pavement mixed with the distant wail of a siren, and she didn't look back. Behind her, Damian stood in the study, the necklace in his hand, its weight heavier than any debt he'd let her go, not because he didn't love her, but because he hadn't found the courage to say he did. Harlem welcomed Isla Monroe back like an old friend, its pulse a familiar rhythm of jazz notes and street chatter. The scent of cornbread drifted from Miss May's bakery, mingling with the sharp tang of coffee from Lenox Avenue's corner shops. But the home she returned to, her mother's rosewater-scented apartment on 135th Street, felt hollow without the turquoise necklace she'd left behind. Isla had walked away from Damian Blackwell's mansion, from his whiskey-scented promises and storm-gray eyes, carrying a broken heart. She hid behind a determined smile. She was no longer the naive librarian who'd signed a contract to save her family. She was a black woman, reclaiming her strength, even if it hurt like hell. The days blurred into a haze of routine. Isla quit her job at the Schomburg Center, unable to bear the curious glances and whispered questions about her mysterious marriage. Instead, she took a part-time gig at a cozy bookstore on 125th Street, where the creak of wooden shelves and the musty smell of old books offered solace. She spent her shifts arranging displays of Maya Angelou's poetry and Zora Neale Hurston's novels, her fingers lingering on the pages as if they could stitch her back together. But every night when the Harlem moon cast silver through her window, Damian's face haunted her the way he'd held her in the rain, the raw pain in his voice when she'd said she loved him, the silence that had driven her away. One morning, as she stacked books, her phone buzzed with a text from Nia Carter, her best friend and Harlem's fiercest journalist. "Meet me at Miss May's Got News, and you need some cornbread to survive it." Isla smiled despite herself pulling on a denim jacket and heading to the bakery. The bell jingled as she entered the warmth of fresh-baked goods, wrapping around her like a hug. Nia sat at a corner table, her braids pulled into a high bun, her eyes sharp with purpose. "Girl, you look like you're carrying the world," Nia said, sliding a plate of cornbread and a coffee across the table. "Eat. Then listen." Isla took a bite, the buttery sweetness grounding her. "What's the news?" Nia leaned in, voice low. Vanessa reads at it again. She's cozying up to Damian, playing the shoulder to cry on while feeding info to his competitors. Word is she's got dirt on his latest deal, a big merger. If it tanks, his board might push him out. Isla's stomach twisted. "Why should I care?" "I'm done with him." Nia raised an eyebrow. "Are you? 'Cause your face says otherwise." "I'm not saying you owe him, but if Vanessa's messing with him, she's messing with you too. She's still spreading lies, calling you a gold digger who ran when the going got tough." Anger flared, but beneath it a pang of worry for Damian. Despite everything, she couldn't erase the man who'd whispered she was under his skin, whose touch had set her alight. "I'll think about it," Isla said, her voice tight. "But I'm not going back to that mansion." Nia nodded, squeezing her hand. "Whatever you do it for you, not him. Now eat that cornbread before I steal it." The bookstore became Isla's refuge, but a new spark entered her life when Lila Brooks, the Manhattan editor, emailed her. "Your draft on Harlem's libraries was raw but powerful. I want you to expand it into a full chapter for our book. Deadline's tight, 2 weeks. Don't let me down." Isla's heart raced. This was a chance to prove herself, to show she was more than a contract wife or a Harlem stereotype. But Lila's tone, professional, yet laced with doubt, stung a reminder of the barriers she faced as a black woman in a white-dominated industry. She threw herself into the project, spending late nights at the bookstore, her laptop glowing as she wrote about the Schomburg's role in preserving black stories, her words fueled by pride and defiance. One evening, as she locked up the store, a familiar figure waited under the streetlight. Isla Monroe, her grandmother at 70. Amara was a force, her silver hair braided tightly, her eyes carrying the wisdom of a woman who'd marched for civil rights. "Child, you look like you're fighting a war," Amara said, her voice warm but firm. "Come, walk with me." They strolled down Lenox Avenue, the neon signs casting a soft glow. Amara's presence was a balm. Her stories of 1960s Harlem protests, jazz clubs, and resilience grounding Isla. "I gave you that turquoise necklace for a reason," Amara said, stopping near a mural of Maya Angelou. "It's not just pretty. It's a piece of our strength, our survival. You left it behind, didn't you?" Isla's throat tightened. "I had to, Grandma. It was tied to him, to a life that wasn't mine." Amara's eyes softened. "Love's a risk. Isla, it can break you, but it can also make you whole. You've got to decide if he's worth fighting for, or if you're fighting for yourself." The words lingered as Isla returned home, her apartment quiet, except for the distant hum of Harlem's nightlife. She opened her journal, scribbling lines from Still I Rise. I rise, I rise, I rise. She wasn't sure what she'd do about Damian, but she knew one thing: she'd rise with or without him. The turning point came at a poetry reading. Nia organized at the Apollo Theater, Harlem's beating heart. The stage was lit with warm amber lights, the air alive with the buzz of poets and dreamers. Isla had agreed to read, a step toward reclaiming her voice. Dressed in a simple black dress, her curls free, she stepped to the microphone, her heart pounding. The crowd hushed as she began, her voice steady but soulful, reciting Maya Angelou's Phenomenal Woman. "I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. The words poured out each line, a declaration of her strength, her beauty, her blackness. The audience erupted in applause, and Isla felt a fire ignite within her, a reminder of who she was beyond Damian's world. As she stepped off stage, Marcus Tate approached, his kind eyes tinged with urgency. "Isla, we need to talk," he said, pulling her to a quiet corner. "What's this about?" she asked, wary. "It's Damian," Marcus said, voice low. "He's a mess, drinking too much, losing focus. The board's circling and Vanessa's feeding them lies about his leadership. I know you walked away and I don't blame you. But he loves you, Isla. He's just too damn scared to admit it." Her chest tightened, Marcus's words slicing through her defenses. "He had his chance," she said, but her voice wavered. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Elena, my sister, would have wanted him to live, not just survive. You're the first person since her who's made him try." Marcus paused, his gaze steady. "I'm not saying go back. Just don't let Vanessa win." The weight of his words followed Isla home, where she lay awake, the Harlem moon mocking her restless heart. She couldn't ignore the truth she still loved. Damian, not the billionaire or the contract, but the man who'd trembled when he held her, who'd looked at her like she was his salvation. But love wasn't enough, if it meant losing herself. She made a decision. She'd face him one last time, not to save him, but to close this chapter for good. That next evening, Isla took a cab to the Upper West Side, her heart a drumbeat as the mansion loomed into view. Claire let her in, her expression unreadable, and led her to the study. The room was dim, lit only by a dying fire, the air heavy with the scent of whiskey and leather. Damian sat at the desk, a glass in one hand, the turquoise necklace in the other. His shirt was unbuttoned, his hair disheveled, and his eyes red-rimmed and haunted, locked on her as she entered. "Isla," he said, voice rough like he hadn't spoken in days. "Why are you here?" She stood tall, her black dress absorbing the firelight, her curls framing a face that held both strength and sorrow. "I heard about Vanessa," she said, voice steady. "She's using you, leaking info to your competitors. I'm not here to fix your mess, Damian. I'm here because I deserve to know the truth. Did you ever see me, or was I just a way to fill the void Elena left?" He stood swaying slightly, the necklace glinting in his hand. "You think you're a replacement," he said, his voice breaking. "Elena's gone, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But you're not her. You're Isla, and you've been under my skin since the day you walked in here, defying me with those eyes that fire. I pushed you away because I'm a coward, because loving you means risking losing you, and I can't." He stopped, his fist clenching the necklace, digging into his palm. Her breath caught his words, a blade and a bomb. She stepped closer, the firelight dancing on her skin, the scent of her jasmine perfume mingling with the whiskey in the air. "You don't get to say that now," she said, voice trembling. "Not after you let me walk away." He moved toward her, closing the distance, his hand reaching for hers. His fingers brushed her wrist, warm and unsteady, sending a jolt through her. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his other hand lifting to her cheek, thumb tracing the curve of her jaw. The heat of his touch was electric, pulling her into a dangerous orbit. His breath was hot against her face, whiskey and sandalwood enveloping her, and she felt the pull of him, the ache she'd tried to bury. Her hands found his chest, fingers curling into his open shirt, grazing the taut skin beneath, feeling the rapid thud of his heart. A soft gasp escaped her, lost in the crackle of the fire. His lips hovered near hers, close enough to taste his eyes, dark with a hunger that mirrored her own. "I don't deserve you," he murmured, his voice a low growl. "But I can't let you go again." The air was thick, charged with need, But Isla's resolve held firm. She wanted him. God, she wanted him. But not like this, not in a haze of whiskey and regret. You don't get to decide that, she said, stepping back, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. I need time. Damian, prove you mean it, or let me go for good. She turned her heels, echoing on the hardwood, leaving him in the dim study, the necklace still clutched in his hand. The Harlem night greeted her as she stepped outside the cool air, a shock against her flushed skin. She'd faced him, bared her truth, and walked away stronger. But as she hailed a cab, the memory of his touch, his fingers on her jaw, his heartbeat under her palms, lingered a promise and a wound. Back in her apartment, Isla opened her laptop, the glow illuminating her determined face. She poured her heart into the book chapter, for Lila, writing about Harlem's libraries as sanctuaries of black resilience. She wasn't just surviving, she was rising. And no one, not even Damian Blackwell, could dim her light. Harlem morning was crisp, the air carrying the faint scent of roasted coffee from Lenox Avenue's shops, and the distant wail of a saxophone. Isla Monroe sat at her apartment's small kitchen table, her laptop open, the glow illuminating her tired but determined face. The chapter she'd written for Lila Brooks's book on urban libraries was nearly complete, a love letter to Harlem's Schomburg Center, and the black stories it preserved. Writing had become her anchor, a way to rise above the ache of leaving Damian Blackwell's mansion, his whiskey-soaked confession, and the turquoise necklace she'd left behind. But even as she typed, his voice haunted her. I'm a coward. Isla, loving you means risking losing you. She'd walked away, choosing herself. But the love she felt for him lingered like a bruise. Her phone buzzed, Nia Carter's name flashing on the screen. Isla smiled, grateful for her best friend's relentless energy. Yo sis, you ready for this? Nia's voice was a mix of excitement and urgency. Lila's publisher just called. They love your chapter, but they want you at a meeting in Napa Valley, some fancy wine country summit with big-shot editors. And guess who's gonna be there? Your ex-husband. Isla's heart stuttered. Damian. Why, business probably. Nia said. He's got stakes in some vineyard deal. But here's the tea. Vanessa's sniffing around, trying to tank his merger. I hacked into her assistant's email. Don't ask how, and found messages. She's feeding lies to his board, saying he's unstable because of you. We gotta shut her down. Ila's grip tightened on the phone, anger flaring. Vanessa Reed's venom had already poisoned her time with Damian, and now she was using their breakup to destroy him. I'm not doing this for him, Isla said, her voice firm. But I'm not letting her win. That's my girl, Nia said. I'm coming with you. We'll show these wine country folks what Harlem's made of. The flight to Napa Valley was a blur. Isla's mind caught between her upcoming pitch to Lila's publisher and the prospect of seeing Damian again. When they landed, the rolling hills of Napa greeted them, vineyards stretching under a golden sun, the air rich with the sweet tang of fermenting grapes. The summit was held at a sprawling estate, its stone walls draped in ivy, the courtyard alive with the clink of wine glasses and the murmur of elite conversation. Isla wore a tailored navy dress, her curls loose, her confidence bolstered by Nia's presence and the knowledge that her words, her story, had earned her a place here. Lila Brooks met them at the entrance, her sharp eyes assessing Isla. Your chapter's strong, she said, but this meeting's a make or break. Impress the board and we'll greenlight a full book deal. No pressure. Her tone was encouraging, but edged with doubt, a reminder of the hurdles Isla faced as a black woman in publishing. Isla nodded her resolve, hardening. She'd prove herself not just for Lila, but for every kid in Harlem who dreamed of seeing their story in print. The meeting was intense. A room of mostly white editors dissecting her work with clinical precision. Isla stood tall, her voice steady as she spoke about the Schomburg's role in preserving Black resilience, weaving in lines from Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. Libraries like the Schomburg aren't just buildings, she said. They're sanctuaries where we rise, where our stories breathe. The room was silent for a moment, then erupted in nods and murmurs of approval. Lila's lips curved into a rare smile. Well done, Isla. We'll talk contract tomorrow. As Isla stepped out into the courtyard, her heart soaring, she caught sight of Damian across the vineyard. He stood among a group of suits, his black suit sharp, his gray eyes scanning the crowd. When they landed on her, time seemed to stop. His expression shifted, surprise, longing, and something deeper, unguarded. He excused himself, striding toward her, and Isla's pulse quickened the memory of his touch in the mansion's study. Flooding back, Isla, he said, voice low, rough with emotion. You're here for work, she said, keeping her tone even though her body hummed at his nearness. Not for you. He nodded, a flicker of pain crossing his face. I deserve that. But I need to talk to you about Vanessa, about everything. Before she could respond, Nia appeared, arms crossed. You got 5 minutes. Blackwell, don't waste her time. Damian led Isla to a quiet corner of the vineyard, the sun dipping low, casting a warm glow over the rows of grapes. Vanessa's been leaking info to my competitors, he said, his voice tense. She's trying to convince my board I'm unfit to lead. I didn't see it until you warned me. I was distracted. By what? Isla asked, her voice sharp, though she knew the answer. By you, he said, stepping closer, his eyes locked on hers. By losing you, I was a fool, Isla. I let fear rule me, and I pushed you away when I should have held you closer. Her breath caught his words, a spark in the dusk. But before she could speak, Nia rushed over, holding her phone. Got it, she said, grinning. Vanessa's emails proof she's been sabotaging Damian's deal. I sent them to Marcus. He's presenting them to the board right now. Isla's mind raced. We need to get to that meeting, she said, turning to Damian. If we expose her, you're clear. He nodded, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Let's do it. The boardroom was a stark contrast to the vineyard's warmth, its glass walls reflecting the tense faces of Damian's board. Vanessa stood at the head, her emerald dress, a bold statement, her voice smooth, as she spun lies about Damian's instability. Isla and Damian burst in, Marcus at their side, holding a tablet with the incriminating emails. This ends now, Damian said, his voice commanding. Vanessa's been betraying us, leaking sensitive data to our rivals. The proof's right here, Marcus projected the emails, and the room erupted in murmurs. Vanessa's face paled, her smile crumbling. This is a misunderstanding, she stammered, but the board's glares silenced her. The chairman stood, his voice cold. Miss Reed, you're done here. Security will escort you out. As Vanessa was led away, her eyes burned into Isla, a promise of retribution. But Isla didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than Vanessa's venom. The board turned to Damian, their trust restored, and he addressed them with a steadiness Isla hadn't seen before. I've made mistakes, he said, his gaze flicking to her. But I'm here to lead, and I won't let you down. When the meeting ended, Damian pulled Isla aside, his voice low. Thank you, he said, his hand brushing hers, sending a jolt through her. You didn't have to do this. I did it for me, she said, meeting his eyes, to prove I'm more than your contract wife. He stepped closer, his breath warm against her cheek. You were never just that, Isla. You're everything. That night, a freak blizzard swept through Napa Valley, a rare storm that blanketed the vineyards in snow. Isla stood at her hotel window watching the flakes swirl under the streetlights, her heart a tangle of hope and fear. Lila had just called her book deal was confirmed, a triumph that should have felt like victory. But Damian's words, "You're everything," echoed louder, pulling her toward a truth she couldn't ignore. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Damian Snow dusting his hair and coat, his eyes fierce with resolve. In his hand was the turquoise necklace glinting in the dim light, and a handful of torn paper, the shredded remains of their marriage contract. "I don't need this," he said, voice breaking. "I need you, Isla. I love you. I've loved you since I saw you in that library, smiling at those kids, like you held the whole world in your hands." Her breath caught tears welling as the weight of his words sank in. He stepped closer, the scent of sandalwood and snow enveloping her, his hand lifting to her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear. "I walked away from a $1 billion deal to protect you," he said, voice raw. "Vanessa tried to use your name to ruin me, and I wouldn't let her. You're worth more than any contract, any empire." Isla's heart pounded the truth of his sacrifice, shattering her defenses. She reached for him, and he pulled her into his arms, their lips crashing together in a kiss that felt like salvation. The blizzard roared outside, but his mouth was hot, urgent tasting of snow and wine from the summit. His hands slid to her waist, fingers pressing through her sweater, tracing the curve of her hips with a hunger that made her gasp. The sound of their breaths mingled with the wind's howl, a wild symphony that drowned out the world. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, her body arching into his, feeling the hard planes of his chest through his damp coat. He broke the kiss, his forehead resting against hers, breath ragged. "I'm yours, Isla," he whispered, his lips grazing her jaw, sending shivers down her spine. No more walls, no more fear. She pulled back, searching his eyes, her voice trembling but firm. "Prove it, Damian. Love me for real, not because you're guilty or scared. I deserve that." He nodded his hand, cupping her face, the turquoise necklace pressed between them. "I will every day for as long as you'll let me." The hotel room was warm, the fire in the hearth casting a golden glow. Damian set the necklace on the table, his hands returning to her gentle but sure. He peeled off her sweater, his fingers brushing her shoulders, feeling the soft warmth of her skin. Isla's breath hitched, her hands sliding under his shirt, tracing the taut muscles of his back, her nails grazing lightly, drawing a low groan from him. The firelight danced on their skin, illuminating every curve, every scar as they stood close, hearts pounding in sync. They didn't cross the final line, but the intimacy, the way his lips brushed her collarbone, the way her fingers memorized his heartbeat spoke louder than words. As the blizzard raged, they sank onto the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, the necklace glinting nearby. "I'm not going back to Harlem yet," Isla said, her voice soft but resolute. "I've got a book to finish, a name to make, but I want you with me, Damian, as my partner, not my owner." He kissed her forehead, his voice a vow. "I'm here. Isla, for you, for us." Outside, the snow fell blanketing Napa Valley in silence, but inside a new warmth bloomed, a love built on truth, not contracts. Isla closed her eyes, her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. They'd faced the storm, and for the first time, she believed they could weather anything. The Key West sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of coral and gold, its reflection shimmering on the turquoise waves. Isla Monroe stood on a private beach, the warm sand slipping between her toes, the salty breeze carrying the scent of sea and blooming hibiscus. A year had passed since the blizzard in Napa Valley, since Damian Blackwell had torn their marriage contract to pieces and vowed to love her for real. Now, in a simple white lace dress that hugged her curves, her curls cascading freely, Isla prepared to marry him again this time, not bound by debt or duty, but by a love forged through storms. Her fingers brushed the turquoise necklace at her throat. Amara's gift, a symbol of the strength that had carried her from Harlem's streets to this moment. The beach was alive with soft reggae music, the rhythm pulsing from a steel drum band under a canopy of palm trees. Lanterns hung from wooden posts, their golden light flickering as dusk settled. Nia, Carter Isla's best friend, adjusted the hibiscus flower in her hair, her grin wide. "Girl, you look like a queen," Nia said, her braids catching the sunset's glow. "Harlem's proud of you," Isla laughed, squeezing Nia's hand. "Couldn't have done it without you. You ready to be my maid of honor?" "Born ready," Nia said, winking. "But if Damian messes this up, I'm still coming for him." Nearby, Marcus Tate, Damian's best friend and lawyer, adjusted his tie, his warm smile a quiet reassurance. Isla Monroe, Isla's grandmother, stood with a copy of Maya Angelou's poetry, her silver braids gleaming, her eyes bright with pride. Lila Brooks, the editor who'd championed Isla's book, mingled with guests, her presence a testament to Isla's triumph. Her book, Sanctuaries of the Soul. Harlem's libraries had hit bestseller lists, its pages a celebration of Black resilience that resonated far beyond New York. Isla wasn't just a librarian anymore. She was a voice, a storyteller, a phenomenal woman. But the past still cast shadows. Vanessa Reed, though disgraced after her schemes were exposed in Napa, had resurfaced on social media, posting cryptic messages about Damian's unstable past and Isla's opportunistic rise. The rumors stung, but Isla had learned to rise above them. Today wasn't about Vanessa or the doubters. It was about her and Damian, about a love that had survived contracts, betrayals, and their own fears. The ceremony was set on a stretch of beach framed by coconut palms, the waves a gentle soundtrack. Guests, Harlem friends, Key West, locals, and a few of Damian's trusted colleagues sat on white chairs adorned with seashells. Isla's father was there, his eyes misty with guilt and joy. "I'm sorry for putting you through that contract," he'd whispered earlier, "but I'm so proud of you, baby girl." Isla had squeezed his hand, smiling. "I forgive you, Dad. That contract led me to him." As the steel drums softened, Amara stepped forward, her voice rich and resonant as she read from Phenomenal Woman. "I'm a woman. Phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me." The words hung in the air, a blessing, and Isla felt their power settle into her bones. Then the music shifted, a soulful reggae melody, and she turned to see Damian. He stood at the end of the aisle, not in the severe black tuxedo of their first wedding, but in a light gray suit. His hair slightly tousled, a nervous smile breaking through his usual stoicism. His gray eyes locked on hers, bright with a love so unguarded it stole her breath. As she walked toward him barefoot on the sand, the world faded. There was only him, the man who'd chosen her over his empire, who'd bared his soul in a Napa blizzard. When she reached him, he took her hands, his palms warm, steady. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice low, meant only for her. Not just today, but every day. She smiled, her heart full. "You're not so bad yourself, Blackwell." The officiant, a local with a warm Key West drawl, began, but the vows were theirs, unscripted, raw. Damian spoke first, his voice trembling with emotion. "Isla, you gave me a reason to live again, to love again. You saw the man behind the walls, and you stayed, even when I didn't deserve it. I promised to love you, protect you, and stand by you through every storm, because you're my home." Tears shimmered in Isla's eyes as she replied, her voice steady but thick with feeling. "Damian, you showed me that love can heal even the deepest wounds. You're not just my partner. You're my safe place, my strength. I promise to stand with you, to challenge you, to love you no matter what comes, because you're my heart. They exchanged rings, simple silver bands engraved with tiny hibiscus blooms, and the crowd erupted in applause. Damian leaned in his lips, meeting hers in a kiss that was soft but profound. A quiet vow, sealed by the sea. Isla wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling his warmth, the steady beat of his heart, knowing she was exactly where she belonged. The reception was a burst of Key West magic held under a starlit sky on the beach. Wooden tables were draped in white linens laden with conch fritters, key lime pie, and mango salsa. The flavors a nod to the island's vibrancy. Lanterns swayed in the breeze and the reggae band played a lively beat, drawing guests to a makeshift dance floor. Damian never strayed far from Isla, his hand resting on her back or entwined with hers as if afraid she might vanish. He laughed more, his deep chuckle blending with the music, and even joined the kids from Harlem in a playful dance, his usual reserve melting away. Isla watched him, her heart swelling. The cold, untouchable billionaire who'd once terrified her was now the man she loved, open and alive in ways she'd never imagined. Nia pulled her aside, grinning. Okay, I admit it. He's not half bad. But you're still the star of this show. Couldn't have done it without you, Isla said, hugging her. You kept me grounded? Marcus approached, raising a glass. To you, Isla. You brought him back to life. Elena would have loved you. The mention of Elena, Marcus's sister, brought a pang, but also peace. Isla had never been a replacement. She was Damian's future, just as he was hers. But the night wasn't without its shadows. As Isla and Damian swayed to a slow reggae tune, Lila hurried over, her face tense. We've got a problem, she said, showing them her phone. Vanessa had posted a scathing article on a gossip site accusing Damian of emotional instability and Isla of manipulating her way to fame. The post was gaining traction, threatening to tarnish their joy. Isla's stomach dropped, but Damian's grip on her hand tightened. She's not ruining this, he said, his voice firm. We'll handle it together. The next morning, while the wedding guests enjoyed a beach brunch, Damian and Isla sat with Lila, Nia, and Marcus in a quiet bungalow, strategizing. We can't just ignore it, Lila said. The publisher's getting nervous. They love your book, Isla, but scandal could hurt sales. Nia smirked, already typing on her laptop. I've got dirt on Vanessa, financial records, showing she's been dodging taxes. If we leak this, she's done. Isla hesitated, her conscience tugging. I don't want to stoop to her level, she said. There's another way. Damian looked at her, pride in his eyes. What's your plan? Let's tell our story, Isla said. The truth about the contract, the pain, the love, not to fight Vanessa, but to show who we are. People will see through her lies. Lila nodded, impressed. A podcast. There's a popular one based in Miami. They'd jump at this. It's raw, authentic, perfect for your brand. Isla. Within hours, arrangements were made. Isla and Damian recorded an episode with Miami vibes, their voices weaving a story of debt, heartbreak, and redemption. Isla spoke of Harlem's strength, her grandmother's lessons, and the love that had healed her. Damian admitted his guilt over Elena, his fear of losing Isla, and the moment he'd chosen her over his empire. She's not just my wife, he said, his voice thick. She's my reason. The podcast went viral, drowning out Vanessa's article. Listeners flooded social media with support, calling Isla a phenomenal woman, and Damian a man reborn. The publisher doubled down on Isla's book, and Lila secured a second deal for her to write a memoir. Vanessa's credibility crumbled, her schemes exposed by Nia's leaks. and she faded into irrelevance. But the true test came that evening as Isla and Damian returned to the beach for a private moment. The reception was winding down. The guests dancing under the stars, the reggae band playing a soulful cover of Bob Marley's Is This Love? Damian led Isla to the water's edge, the waves lapping at their feet, the moonlight casting silver on her lace dress. His hand rested on her lower back, fingers tracing the curve through the delicate fabric, sending a warm shiver through her. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice low, his eyes tracing her face. "You didn't just save us. You showed the world who you are." She smiled, leaning into him, the scent of his sandalwood cologne mixing with the salty sea air. "We saved each other," she said, her fingers brushing his jaw, feeling the faint stubble under her touch. "But we're not done fighting, are we?" He chuckled, pulling her closer, his lips grazing her ear, his breath hot and teasing. "Not by a long shot. But with you, I'm ready for anything." Their lips met a kiss that was slow deep, a promise woven into every touch. The sound of the waves blended with their breaths, a soft rhythm that echoed their heartbeats. His hands slid to her hips, pressing gently, feeling the warmth of her through the lace while her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. The moonlight illuminated their silhouettes, her curls a dark halo, his frame a steady anchor. The kiss wasn't just passion. It was home, a vow that they'd face every storm together. As they pulled back, foreheads touching, Damian whispered, "I love you, Isla. Always I love you too," she said, her voice a soft melody, her hand over his heart, feeling its steady beat. "Forever." He surprised her, then pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a new ring, silver with a tiny turquoise stone, a nod to her grandmother's necklace. "For our new beginning," he said, slipping it onto her finger. "And for Harlem, I'm funding a new library, wing at the Schomburg, a gift to the place that raised you." Isla's eyes welled, joy spilling over. "You didn't have to," she whispered, throwing her arms around him. "I wanted to," he said, kissing her forehead, "because you deserve it, and because I want our future to start here with you." They stood there hand in hand, the sea whispering its secrets, the stars bearing witness to a love that had conquered fear, guilt, and lies. Isla rested her head on his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat, knowing they'd found their forever. The storms of the past had faded, and in their place a new dawn bloomed, one of love, healing, and the courage to rise, healing and the